As we all know very well this story, today as we have been through COVID-19, there has been an increase in depression rate in America. Especially in the year of 2020,
电量一，
they has a research, there was a survey in adult in Americans, and about 18.4% in America, they are diagnosed with depression once in their lives. And the rate is interesting because there were more women than men, more young people than older people, and less educated people, more or less educated people than educated people. However, depression is very hard for some people, and that lead people to think about giving up their lives and what they are doing. But it's just not America, but I know where I'm from, Korea, they have, very big concern about this depression. And many young people, they're going very hard time. When we have physical hardship or suffering, we can sometimes, or most of the times, we can have medicine, and we can see our physical illness. We can feel it. And the other people can see it. But what about the illness of our inside? If you are sick inside of our heart, nobody can really see. But God. That's the hardest part of our mental illness. Whatever it is, whether it is depression or whether it is a mental disorder, whatever it is, what makes us hard is that the medicine is not going to help us. It will help us for a certain time of, temporal time in our lives, but it's not going to help us forever. I share this research, and it's because we have hardship and suffering in our lives. Sometimes we feel like we're nothing. Sometimes we are powerless, that we can't really do anything in our lives. What do you do then? We often feel the emptiness in our hearts. The more difficult things are that people would not know how they are supposed to do when the hardship comes, when they are in great suffering. What we want to see today from the book of Daniel is that what the prayer gives us. What is the prayer? What does the prayer gives us is what we want to see today. Through prayer, we can have experiential faith and also overcome our hardship and suffering and weakness, because there is power, there is benefit that comes from our prayer. First, the prayer will cast out fear. That we want to share three things. The first thing is that the prayer will cast out our fear. The second will restore relationship with others, with God, with people. And finally, God will always give better ones than any other things. So the first, prayer casts out all fear in our hearts. So Daniel, as we read today, he was in great danger. We did not read the whole chapter 6, but in previous chapter, there was officials, there was governor who wants to kill Daniel. And Daniel was actually put in death because he was in the den of lions. But when there were officials and governor who was trying to kill Daniel, they made a decree that they made their own, and they convinced the king And they broke the decree because they knew Daniel was going to pray before the God of Daniel. So it was interesting because, Daniel, although he knew, in verse 10 it says that he learned that the decree had been published. Although he knew that it was published, he's clearly saying that he knew and he learned it. Then he went to where? He went to his upstairs room, upper chamber that he usually went on every day, 3 times a day. What he did was very interesting, that he opened the window wide. And then what he did, he prayed. It seems like, he pretends, or he wants the other people to see him. But here we can find that Daniel was without any fear. He was not fearing any other authorities that comes from the world. I will break down the fear into 3 different parts. That was the first, the fear that comes from the world. The world will give you concern. The world will tell you that you're not ready. The world will give you the fear because they don't want you to come before the Word of God. What do you do when you are feeling uncertainty in your lives? Especially when you are a student, when you're working, or even, parents, when we are getting older. What do you do? Like, in our life, we feel the emptiness. We feel we don't know what we have to do. When I was in college, I was undecided. My major was undecided. I didn't really know what to do until 3rd year of my, college. And then I got married, and then I dropped down my school because it was financial situation. Then I wasn't able to go to school anymore, so I just dropped down. I thought that, I was not going to graduate college. But by the grace of God, I went back to the Bible college, seminary, and then I finished my degree. But before then, I was just going to secular college, secular university. So my major was business, sometimes biology, sometimes anything else. But I really didn't know what to do for me. It was uncertainty. And some of you may go through this situation. This is the fear that we face today. We sometimes don't know what to do. We sometimes, getting really different times. But as we can see here, how Daniel was doing was that he was not fearing the power that comes from the world. I want to say this is a situational fear. That it gives you from your situation, from your environment, that you don't know what to do. You have fear in your heart. And the second fear is the death, the fear of death. This fear of death we all have. Wherever you are, wherever you go, whatever you do, how old you are, fear of death is to anyone. So Daniel also had fear of death. Of course, he was a man. He was a human. He, of course, had this fear of death. As we're getting older, or as we are living in this, last times, maybe we can fear more physically what the death is. Because when I see news, what is happening past few years, the war, rumors, famines, and what is going on in this world, when I see the news, I feel like death is right there, near me. Because it can happen here. It can happen to us. It can happen to anyone. So this is the fear of death. And lastly, it is the fear of uncertain future. Uncertainty that gives us fear, because that's who we are. We don't know what is going to happen in next few hours, in next few days or year. That's who we are. But we just live. Although we don't know, although we are with uncertainty, we just live with faith. These are the fear that Daniel had, even though there was decree that he was going to be killed. So we can see Daniel was not with full of fear, but faith. He believed that he is innocent. He believed that he is righteous. He believed that God will save him. And this is the power of prayer. In verse 10, it says that he has done previously. In verse 10, it says, just as he has done before. Next is the power of prayer. Next is the power of prayer is giving the restoration of relationship. How does it give restoration of relationship? So after Daniel got in the den of lion, the king Darius was praying all night without food, without any entertainment. It's interesting that it says entertainment, because it seems like king every night he had some kinds of entertainment, but he stopped doing what he was doing, and what he did was praying. He was praying for Daniel, and right after the dawn, he came directly into the den's lion, and he asked, Daniel, Daniel, are you still there? Is your living God saved you? We can see here how Daniel and King Darius is getting intimacy relationship. They are having really close relationship with these struggles. However, what I want to share more is that the relationship that Daniel had with his God. I want to say this is the secret that Daniel had with his God. Do you have this experience in your life? The secret that you only have with you and your God? That nobody knows but I and God know. When Daniel was in Babylon, Israel was no longer nation because they were exiles in Babylon and Assyria. But Daniel was exiled in Babylon, and he was actually not like just normal civilians. Of course, they were exiles. They were more like captive. They were more like a slave of Babylon. But Daniel, he kept praying for his nation Israel. It seems hopeless because Israel was no longer there. Daniel and his 3 other friends were skillful, smart, and faithful. And they were no longer living in the destroyed land Israel, but they were in the great city Babylon. What can they do? They can prosper whatever they can do. They can, if they want wealth, if they want to live wealthy, they can. Because they were officials. Because they were smart, they were skillful, they were faithful. And as you see, King Darius is not a king of Israel. He was the king of Babylon. But Babylon king, Israelites are being together. The restore of relationship. between people and between God. Every day he was praying 3 times facing Jerusalem. It was darkness that they could not see what is going to happen to the people of Israel, but he was full of faithfulness. He believed that God will save Israel. And sometimes we also have darkness in our lives that we can't really see things ahead. We can't really see. My eyes are closed, my heart is closed, my heart is in darkness, that I really don't know where to go. See what Daniel did and pray regularly as he was praying 3 times a day. Like I shared in the beginning, in 0.4% people of Americans, they are in depression. And 21% of them are the age of 18 through 24. And each state, I also saw the ratio, and Kentucky was actually one of the very high percentage ratio. It was about 24%. The highest was I forgot. It was West Virginia, 27. So we can see Kentucky was a little bit higher ratio. But anyway, you can see here that many people, many young people are suffering in their depression. Daniel could also have this depression because the days that he's going to go through is not bright. Even his nation. But he never stopped praying to God and God's guidance. And God answered his prayer. And how he prayed was through the restoration of relationship. Finally, the last one I want to share about the prayer is that he always brings good news. He always brings the best result that we can ever have. After Daniel was put in den of lions, he survived. It said that God shuts the mouth of lions for a whole night, and then in the morning that Daniel came out alive. And what I want to see here is the verse 24 and verse 28, through verse 24 and verse 28. This is, if you can see very closely, this is very interesting verses. Verse 24 to verse 28, it says, "At the king's command, the men who had falsely accused Daniel were brought in and thrown into the lion's den, along with their wives and children." So all wives and children and all the officials were killed. How? And before they reached the floor of the den, the lions overpowered them and crushed all their lives. The lions were hungry. There was the prey that they could eat, but their mouth was shut. But right after Daniel came out of the den, and when there was officials and the children and the wives, it says lion crushed all their bones. Verse 25, "Then King Darius wrote to all nations and people of every language in all the earth." So this is what I want you to see clear, very closely. It says, "May you prosper greatly. I issue a decree that in every part of my kingdom people must fear and reverence the God of Daniel." This is the confession of King of Gentile. "For he is the living God, and he endures forever. His kingdom will not be destroyed. His dominion will never end. He rescues and he saves. perform signs and wonders in the heavens and on the earth. He has rescued Daniel from the power of lions. And how it ends in verse 28, it says, "So Daniel prospered during the reigns of Darius and the reigns of Cyrus, the Persian." So, the result of what God has done is so amazing here, because He did not just save Daniel from the den of lions, but what God has done was that He was giving the Gentile king the goddess. Who is God of Israel? This confession is not coming from Israelites, but it's coming from Gentile king Darius. This is so true what he confessed. He is the living God. He endures forever. His kingdom will not be destroyed. This is how God brings you when you pray. This is how will give you the better conclusion of your prayer, the better what you can get from your prayer. Daniel was not doing something special. Daniel was just praying 3 times a day as usual. He never gave up praying. But when he continued praying, that God blessed this man. And not just this man, but the whole people. The whole nation. He says in verse 28, "I issue a decree that in every part of my kingdom people must fear and reverence the king of Daniel." Brothers and sisters, this is what we're supposed to come. Why we are supposed to come before the Lord in prayer. This will give us prosperous lives and fruits in our lives. As we are closing today's sermon, we saw how God works with men of righteousness. God never forgot this man, Daniel, and his people. And it is because Daniel never forgot his king, his God. The God of Daniel is God of ours. He will cast out all the fear. And He will help you with the best result. And He will restore the relationship with your people and with God. If you have ever in trouble with relationship, as I was hearing one of a sermon last week, I heard from Pastor Tim Keller. I know that some of you already know. He passed away a few months ago, but he's a great preacher. He was a pastor in New York City. What he said was that, he has been pastor for so many years. And then, when he is pastoring, he sees a lot of people passing away. A lot of people died. Because, people die. And whenever he went to the hospital, or whenever he went to meet his, congregation who were sick or right before he died, every people, they never said, "Oh, I should have earned more money. I should have spent more time, with my worldliness. I should have done more things in my life, this and that." None of them have ever said it. But what they said was that I should have spent more time with my family. I should have spent more time with my children, with my parents, with my friends. All they were saying was the relationship. So, God is the one who will restore our relationship but let us do in prayer so we see that God is God of all nations. Let us pray together.